I can see that I will have to show you how to be villains. No.
So, starting again.
Do I have to do the fucking...
No, this is mine. This is mine.
Fucking We Are Number One meme again.
No, we got our take. This is Samuel Lyle Inglis, joined by Thomas Richardson, and we are here to talk about anime.
Yes, this is how Samuel learned to stop worrying and love the Animu.
Not in this case, though. Maybe in the future, but not now.
I like how you said maybe, even though you're very against anime.
I'm incredibly against anime. The only thing that I've seen of anime that I think is even vaguely good was Perfect Blue. If you have not heard of that, then you are scum. What? You claim to be an anime fan and you haven't heard of Perfect Blue?
Yeah, of course I've fucking heard of Perfect Blue.
Good. Then you're not scum. Well, you are, but you're not scum for that reason.
You're also scum.
We're both scum. Come on, face it. We're scum.
We are scum.
We are scum. Happily scum.
Not happily. Just scum.
Just scum. Oh, that wind.
That wind is crazy, by the way. It's a very windy boy outside.
So basically, we're here, or I'm here at the very least, to talk about Hellsing.
Well, first of all, why don't you, for the listeners, all 0 of them.
-1.
Yeah, all...
Minus...
all -7 billion listeners we have right now. What your general thoughts of anime are.
I can't stand it. It's as simple as that. Specifics, I hate the ugliness of it. I don't like how they cut so many corners in the design. The movement is very sloppy. It feels like there are 20 frames missing every time somebody even just moves their hand. It's appalling. It really is absolutely appalling to me. And I hate the tonal inconsistency of it all. You can have this incredibly somber, quiet moment with what I suppose the most detailed animation that you can get in an anime, where everyone's quiet sitting around. Then you have just sort of some mad, over-energetic girl or something like that sort of come in with gigantic breasts and then, I don't know, flay her arms around and things like that. What's with that weird sweat effect that they always use? Just like little beads of sweat actually launching off the body. I don't get it. I don't get any of it. I do not get this stupid goddamn animation style that has taken the bloody world by storm. I don't know why. University was awful for all the people that surrounded me that loved anime. I hate it so much. I cannot stand anime. That's my thoughts.
And my thoughts are, it's like wading through shit for diamonds. There's some anime that is amazing, but the vast majority of it is absolute garbage.
Well, I'm yet to find a diamond.
What about Perfect Blue?
It was good. It wasn't great.
Philistine.
I mean, personally, I thought that the not remake Black Swan was better. I'm trying to figure out if I've broken you.
You haven't.
That was a long time ago.
That's my secret, Samuel. I'm already broken. But basically, so the idea for this show is I'm forcing Samuel to watch anime until Stockholm Syndrome kicks in and he starts enjoying it.
Never.
So, and we've started out with a bit of a weird one, but we've started out with Hellsing. So, for those who don't know, Samuel, please describe what your idea of Hellsing is so far. And for those wondering, we watched the first 2 episodes.
So we're about 20% into the whole damn thing.
I have seen all of it before, by the way.
Anyway, so completely seriously, what I think the show is about is it's some sort of secret society, I think. I don't know if it's a public institution. that consists of individuals who are trying to hunt people with vampiric powers, as well as other miscellaneous supernatural entities. They also employ vampires themselves to aid in their efforts to counter, I don't know, hostile vampiric entities. The show seems to begin with some sort of gunfight involving one of the key vampires involved in this institution, Hellsing. Although I don't know if that's both the name of the organization and the protagonist or so of the Sherlock Holmes-like figure of the story. Anyway, so there's a gunfight with him and some villains, and there's a policewoman who gets in the middle of the whole thing, and she dies, but is then resurrected as a vampire and is pretty much forced into the institution. And then some individuals, a particular group funded by an organization that I won't reveal because I think it's supposed to be a surprise, even though they've revealed it in the second episode.
Yeah. That was... the pacing in this is a bit off. So,
anyway, this group has hired other supernatural individuals to attack the Hellsing Institute, because I presume that Hellsing... I presume his family heritage, or like there's a lineage or something connected with this organization. I mean, God knows. Anyway, that's what I think it's about. Am I even close?
That's pretty much it.
In terms of, on the note of slightly greater levity as to what I think it's about, I have no fucking idea. I'm sorry, I do not. I have been trying to piece it together. The second episode, I suppose, was a siege, or well, not even a siege, just an outright assault on one of the most heavily guarded institutions in England. I think it's supposed to be, but screw that. Just a bunch of zombie ghouls come in, and I don't know. The main character, Sherlock Holmes, is supposed to be invincible, but not the Sherlock Holmes like the Van Helsing. I'm confused because you see they're both Victorian pieces of literature. It's blending in my head. I'm going to call him Dorian Gray in a second. I don't know. I really don't. I thought it was a Torchwood-esque show at the beginning. Now it's more Kingsman-y, except shit. Words almost defy me for it. I mean, as they do with so much anime, because I have a real sense that there was little to no interest in actually elucidating the plot of this. It is sheer spectacle, and even then, pretty horrible spectacle at that. I mean, perhaps it's a cultural difference. Perhaps, I mean, there's always slightly, with different parts of the world, there are different ways stories are told, different priorities about structure and things like that. I mean, it's one forgets that the free act structure is more explicitly sort of a European device. Other parts of the world use slightly more freeform expression structure. So perhaps this is a bit of a cultural clash here. Perhaps I am not getting something about how the Japanese particularly like to tell their stories. Although with that being said, I found it not difficult at all to watch a lot of their movies, live action movies. The Seven Samurai. I mean, Akira Kurosawa is a perfectly coherent filmmaker, but no, it seems that anime scriptwriters.
I think the difference is a movie is a self-contained thing, and it conforms to more rigid structures, whereas a manga just goes on. It goes on until it either ends or it gets so unpopular.
Which is why I try to think of it like I do perhaps a soap opera. But even then,
it's
the thing about
soapy. Yeah.
The thing about soap operas is that although they have incredibly terrible writing, almost without exception, they are usually more coherent than this. Like, there is more of a point A to point B aspect to them. And so there's little to no concern about you losing track of the plot. With anime, I can't grasp anything that's really going on. I mean, it's all over the place. I mean, to be terribly honest, it's like Stephen Moffat on crack. I mean, it kind of is a bit. You know, it's sort of all... There's the past, there's the future, there's... I think a figurative section. They're not supposed to actually represent something that's actually going on, but sort of a more abstract representation of it. I really don't know. I still can't entirely figure out what the opening sequence of the first episode was about.
What, with Integra in the...
Yeah.
When she was a child. Yeah, that's an interesting one, because for those who don't know, Hellsing Ultimate, which is the show we're watching, is based on a manga. And the guy who wrote the manga... There's a lot of shit with this manga, but basically the guy who wrote it is a failed hentai artist.
Oh, well, that's
and
good.
He crossed over into mainstream stuff, and this is basically the only big success he's had. And it took him 10 years to finish, but that's not because it's really long. It's just that he would draw like 6-page chapters and then not publish anything for 3 months. And originally, in the manga, that opening scene that you're referring to is actually the second chapter. So the first chapter opens with that fight in the church, from the perspective of Ceres, who is the aforementioned police girl. And after she gets turned into a vampire, then it flashes back in the second chapter to when Integra was a child and goes through that story with her uncle, in case you weren't sure who that was. And
okay, so Hellsing is her uncle?
No.
Oh, God.
She is Hellsing. I think I just broke Samuel.
I presume you mean a member of the Hellsing family?
Yes. But the Sherlock Holmes you're referring to, who is Alucard, for those who actually are aware of what's going on, he's just a vampire. He's not actually part of the Hellsing family.
I find it very unusual that Vancura, what was her name again? Integra. The thing that...
Vancura. Where did you get Vancura from?
I don't know. From where did I get Vancura?
Oh.
So she isn't... Is she a vampire? She's a vampire, isn't she?
No.
She's not a vampire, but hasn't she done weird supernatural shit? I'm not sure. I can't remember.
No.
She hasn't.
No, that's just Sherlock Holmes and policewoman.
Okay, that's just Sherlock Holmes and policewoman. So I presume they're using the Hellsing name because... I mean, I'm talking why this is why the artist selected it, because of the character of Van Helsing in the original novel by Bram Stoker.
Yep.
And, you know, of course, he's the... I mean, in the original, I think he's just an old fuddy-duddy scientist of some sort. But, you know, since then...
He's kind of become the vampire hunter.
He has blossomed into the vampire hunter. He's become this grand figure of, you know, sort of recent mythology almost, European mythology. So I presume that's why they're going... So one presumes the name Dracula is going to pop up at some point in the show?
Well, I mean, if you spell Dracula backwards...
Alucard. You see,
that would be Tracula, if it was Alucard.
So I presume there were rights problems with getting that name then?
No, because Dracula's free use, I think, is the term. He's free.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah,
so I don't know.
He's out. The novel's out of copyright, so anyone can use the character.
So what I find unusual is why they just used the name Hellsing, but come up with this stupid rearrangement for Dracula.
Well, that's actually from the very early vampire films from the 30s. In the sequel, I think it was, there was Alucard.
You see, is this a sequel Stoker wrote to his own novel?
No, it was in a sequel to the 30s movie.
Oh, yes, the Bela Lugosi one.
Yes. And then Dracula had a son whose name was Alucard.
You see, I did not know that.
And then there's this very famous series of games called Castlevania, which I'm sure you haven't heard of.
All I can say is that name is incredibly stupid.
And
because come on, it is.
Basically, it's sort of a side-scrolling action-adventure game where you play as this vampire hunter and go to Dracula's castle and kill Dracula. And one of the main characters in that is Alucard. And because Castlevania is made in Japan and is very famous over there, I imagine the reverence that Alucard, or a character like Alucard would have, is more apparent than the original Stoker Dracula character.
Although they are very clearly aware of that origin, because I imagine, does Hellsing appear in Castlevania?
No.
So obviously they would have to have gone back further to get that name.
Well, yeah, but that's where the main point of infamy in Japan would come from. It wouldn't come from Stoker's novel.
Look, I just hate this. It's hard to really come up with proper, well thought out critique for a show that I cannot even sort of begin to comprehend on just the most basic level, really. I mean, it's even some of my least favorite films I can at least sort of grasp on some sort of narrative level, which allows me to kind of see exactly how the narrative doesn't sort of deliver or fulfill any potential. Whereas this is so bizarre, so out of left field, but so unpleasant to watch that it almost becomes a sickness, really. Watching this is not all that dissimilar to having a cold. It's just a very unpleasant period of time devoted to, a bunch of senses that are just sort of in overdrive or underdrive, and just generally you have a tired, confused, angry sort of outlook to everything after the more you process it. It's a cold. Hellsing, whatever the hell its full name is.
No, that's it.
Hellsing is a cold. It's a sickness. It's awful.
Is that because of the story itself?
The story itself?
The way it's told?
Or
the animation?
If it was just the animation that was the problem, I could endure this. Because if you have a really good script, a really good story to tell, then even if you have terrible visuals, you can still earn some points for the quality of the story. Much like if you had a terrible script and great visuals, you could earn points by the sheer spectacle of it. But with this, it's the combination of an utterly incoherent script with no real access point to these characters, no real way to connect or empathize with them. I mean, the only character that even vaguely has that is the policewoman. What was her name again? Ceres. One sort of has come closest to having a viewpoint. She is entering the narrative much as we are. She is very much the Watson character, as you said. But the problem is that, for one thing, it's not exactly clear what she's feeling or thinking or the exact implications of the choices she's making, because it all sort of happens so quickly, and you don't have much context for any of it. Like, do we even find out, was she actually even called? Was there a scene of her being called to the scene where the whole fracas occurs at the beginning?
She's just there.
She's just there. We have there's no point at which we enter the world of this character and then have it turned upside down. I mean, that's the important thing when you have a viewpoint character, as an access character, an avatar for the audience, is you have to at first you have to find a reason, you have to establish a normalcy for them, which is akin to the normalcy of the viewer's everyday lives. You have to state, okay, this person is much like you and me. They're everyday freaking working Joes or whatever. They have a quiet life. I mean, even if she is a policewoman. But no, we're just right into the whole action. She's there. We don't know why she's there. We just know that some shit is going down. She's killed a little while later. it looks like she's actually being murdered by Van Helsing, and then she's
It's not
not Van Helsing.
It's
Alucard.
Alucard. It's
Alucard.
a D.
Alucard. She's looks like she's murdered by Alucard, and then she's brought back to life. But everybody's acting as though she made a choice to be brought back to life, even though she didn't. She'd die. So I mean, it's not too much of a choice, is it? I mean, you die, you don't die. I mean, and then everybody's completely mean to her for no real reason at all. It's so chaotic.
Don't forget how objectified she is.
Oh, and yeah, that's lovely as well. All those shots of her gigantic breasts, and then her weird outfit that looks like something out of the X-Men. It
does, doesn't it?
I mean, she looks like Jubilee. It's awful. It's so awful. And Alucard. I mean, there's no way you can. I really like the fact that I mentioned Sherlock Holmes actually, because kind of like him in the worst versions of the stories, which like Stephen Moffat in the later seasons of Sherlock, and quite a few other sort of renditions over the years. He's basically invincible.
Yeah.
There is no way that you can really fear for this guy, because he's going to just sort everything out in the end.
Which is why later on the story just kind of puts him aside.
And that's a major flaw in your writing. You have to come up with vulnerabilities to your character.
We will watch this anime eventually, but compare this with a character like Saitama from One Punch Man, who is also literally invincible. The difference is the show and the manga creates tension by having him being late to arrive to the problem. So the tension is whether the other characters who are vulnerable can actually hold off the bad guy long enough for Saitama to arrive and then finish the job.
Okay, that's slightly more reasonable.
Whereas Hellsing just says, we have this all-powerful character, put him on a boat. Put him on a boat for half the series.
I mean, this recalls the classic problem with the Superman character when he was originally written all the way back in the 30s, is that they just didn't give this character any weaknesses at the beginning.
Yeah.
He was just invincible. He's Superman. He's faster than the speeding bullet. He can leap buildings in a single bound back in the days when he couldn't actually fly but just jump really high.
So that's where that's saying.
Yeah, and he's nothing can really hurt him. I mean, bullets. There's that great moment in Superman Returns where that bullet hits his eye, and that is a great moment. I'll give Bryan Singer that moment. Even though Superman Returns is a bit of a meh sort of movie. If your character is so invincible, there's nothing that can really get him. There's no real stakes to any of it. So of course.
Also, you should remember that Alucard, in his normal state.
Oh, you mean Alucard?
Yep, has most of his powers restricted from him.
That's
so when he turned into that dog centipede thing, that was him actually gaining more power.
Alucard is just
invincible.
Superman. He is invincible. There was no stakes at all, and that's another thing. I'm going to sound a little bit like Saul here when he's talking about the Battle of the Five Armies, but I don't care because I agree with him on this. There is an incredible inconsistency in the show about how much threat and danger and power particular supernatural entities pose. What Saul was talking about when it came to the Hobbit movies was that sometimes orcs seem to be much more difficult to defeat than they were on other occasions by the same characters.
Yeah. Is that basically Bolg?
Yes, and of course.
Okay.
And yeah, and then there was that whole weird thing with the orc lieutenant.
Azog. You don't remember Azog the Defiler?
That was his name?
Yes.
Well, is he in The Hobbit, the book?
He's a background character who dies off screen.
Off page.
Whatever.
In
fact, Bolg is more prominent in the book than Azog.
Is Alfred mentioned at all in the book?
No.
Of course not. So, that's very much a problem here. Like, at that moment, I pointed out where that's absolutely atrocious character, the gangster, person.
Jan Valentine.
Jan Valentine. He's absolutely filled with bullets. And I asked you, is he dead? Oh, and by the way, Thomas then said most indignantly, what do you think? And then 10 minutes later, I said, but he's still alive. And then Thomas just says, I lied.
That's what I do.
Yes.
I'm sarcastic and I lie.
The scumness intensifies.
The scumness.
But yeah, so I had no idea how much power an individual, like, he's a vampire, but I mean Alucard is also a vampire. He seems to be invincible. He is pointed out to be slightly more powerful than other vampires. But
it's a bit more incremental than slightly.
Well, yes, I know, but still, I mean, we just don't really get an exact idea of how much power these people have.
True.
We don't know. That's the thing. I mean, a fight doesn't mean nearly as much before it starts when you don't know about the respective abilities of both of its players, as opposed to if you did. Like, if you had a protagonist who was unskilled against somebody who was incredibly skilled, that's suspense right there before the fight even starts. But if you had no idea about the abilities of either of these two people, this was the first time, there's no attention to any of it. It's just spectacle once it actually starts. It really almost doesn't matter about who wins or who loses. And if it's the protagonist, then you know it's going to be the protagonist who wins, or, you know, at least...
Unless you're in a very different kind of story.
Unless you're in the first episode or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's the false protagonist little trick. But, or the decoy protagonist.
Get out.
So, that's another problem, is the powers and the threat of supernatural individuals is not really well established. And also, exactly what all these organizations want. Like, we get what the Hellsing Institute is trying to do. They're trying to protect the common folk, the muggles,
not even the muggles, Queen and Country.
Queen and Country.
They don't give a shit about anyone else.
So they're basically just defending Great Britain.
They're basically anime supernatural James Bond.
Oh, by the way, I love how... I mean, we're watching the dubbed version.
Yes.
So Saul probably very triggered.
Good.
And I just love how inconsistent it is.
I know. It's so good.
Particularly when they go to Rome. And everyone sounds Scottish for some reason.
I'm glad that you say that he sounds Scottish, because so many people think he has an Irish accent.
He is Scottish, isn't he?
He is definitely Scottish. And everyone keeps getting annoyed when they say he's Irish, and the guy goes, no, Scottish.
But why is he Scottish? He should be Italian.
Well, to be fair, he doesn't have an Italian name.
What? But both of the characters sort of didn't sound Italian. You'd think the one who was actually stationed in Rome would sound Italian. You'd think they'd actually have an Italian there to be the Italian in Rome. Look, this show doesn't do a good job of establishing its mythology.
No.
Okay, so as I said, we get a rough idea of what the Hellsing Institute wants, but we have no idea what its opposing factions really want, besides to see about the destruction of the Hellsing.
Well, the only opposing faction that you're fully aware of at this point is Iscariot.
Yes, which is some sort of Roman Catholic...
It's a secret occult section of the Catholic Church that fights monsters.
So basically, the opposite number of the Hellsing organization.
Basically.
That's like if the CIA and MI6 wanted to destroy each other.
But you've got to remember that this particular Japanese person's interpretation of the divide between Protestantism and Catholicism.
So basically, they want to destroy each other because they are different denominations of the same religion.
Yes.
I'm not going to completely scoff at that, because in many ways that very much has happened.
That
and
was
still,
a reality at some point.
But it is, particularly in a modern setting, that is kind of stupid. When there are actual dangerous supernatural entities, both of these organizations exist to counter. You'd think they would have better things to do with their time and money than try to destroy each other.
To be fair, once shit does go down, they sort of reach an alliance.
You'd think. Also, why is it called Iscariot? That's the name of That's Judas's name. I mean, why?
Yeah.
Why would they call their institute after one of the most reviled figures in all of Christendom?
Because they hunt reviled things. I don't know.
I mean, Iscariot wasn't a mythical being in the Bible. He's just a normal person that betrays Jesus. That's what he is.
Maybe they called it that because they hunt the things that are... I was about to say offensive to Christianity, but that's not right. Things that are like abominations against God. Like vampires. And Nazis.
Oh, spoilers.
Yep.
I have to cut that out.
Look, everyone knows. This thing came out 10 years ago. Everyone knows.
Look, I'd never even heard of this show before you graciously introduced me to it.
Yep.
By the way, listeners, if you're wondering why I, a person who has such a noted detestment for this genre, would be agreeing to watch it, it's because I made almost a pact with the devil.
Yeah, it was a very bad trade deal on his part. Very bad trade deal.
I got my money's worth.
No, you didn't.
You hated Lady in the Water. You hated The Last Airbender.
No, I didn't. I thought it was dumb, but I didn't hate it. The Lady in the Water was cancer, but this wasn't negotiated as part of Lady in the Water.
Oh, it was so fun though watching you watch Lady in the Water.
It was so fun watching you watch Hellsing.
Honestly, this Lady in the Water is better than Hellsing.
Nice troll, 10 out of 10.
You think I'm trolling, but I'm not really.
At
At least I could understand what happens in Lady in the Water. In this TV show, I don't even quite understand the logistics of everything. For instance, the final action set piece in the first episode, that took place in Italy, didn't it? Or not?
No, that was in Northern Ireland.
See? I don't even know where the hell things are in this show.
Well, they did explain that...
How well did they explain
Well,
it?
they literally said that Iscariot is annoyed that Hellsing is intervening in Northern Ireland because they consider Ireland to be Catholic.
Not all of Ireland would agree with them.
Well, again, this is one Japanese person's interpretation of the difference between Catholicism and Protestantism.
Mostly a Japanese trying to interpret religion and how it affects European culture. That's like a European trying to figure out what the hell anime means.
I don't think anime's akin to a religion, Samuel. Not yet.
We will see, my friend. We will see.
The day anime becomes an actual religion is the day that humanity has doomed itself. So, of what you've seen of Hellsing so far, what do you think?
Crap.
Is there any part of it that you liked?
The music's alright.
Sometimes.
Sometimes?
Yes.
It's better than the guy who does the music for Hannibal.
Yeah, but he doesn't do music, he does noises.
Yes. And he also completely
Also, Hannibal
defiles the Goldberg variations.
Hannibal is an anime, just so you're aware.
You know what? It's a nicer looking than most anime. Nice troll, 10 out of 10. Is that what you're going to say?
Yeah.
I'm not. Once again, I'm not trolling.
It's got the exact same pacing problems and invincible protagonist problems. It's got invincible antagonist problems.
No, that is a big problem with Hannibal. Hannibal just is goddamn invincible.
Yep, he is the Alucard of Hannibal.
Mm-hmm. Although I like him more than Alucard. I'll say that much.
Yeah, well, Alucard's a piece of shit.
But no, in terms of, like, as a character, I can tolerate Hannibal of Brian Fuller's world than I can Alucard of Hellsing's world. I mean, I'm actually looking forward to when he gets into that bloody boat to bug off for a little while. If not, I mean, we still have Ceres, of course.
Yes,
Did I get her name right?
Ceres and Integra.
Integra. I don't mind Integra too much. She's basically M.
Yeah.
Or Diane.
It's
Not Diana, rather. Sorry, I'm thinking of Twin Peaks.
It's funny how the protagonists of Hellsing really are Ceres and Integra, but the early episodes and the early volumes of the manga make it out to be Alucard, and it's just not the case.
So, I mean, I honestly don't know what else to say about this show. What? Ask me something else. What's something you haven't...
Do you think it could get better?
No. It would have to... It'd have to improve so significantly that, honestly, it would be a near impossibility for somebody to change their writing style that much. Like, there's almost the very style of this, the very manner of its existence is very offensive to me.
Do you think if it was written in a more traditionally Western way, you would enjoy it more?
I understand it. Enjoy it is entirely a different ballpark. But I suppose once I understand it, the work can begin for me to consider whether I enjoy it. I mean, it's not a story I particularly find interesting. I mean, when I was thinking it was a bit like Torchwood, I was sort of dreading it because I don't really like Torchwood. When it's a bit like Kingsman, which it sort of is now, I don't really find it that interesting because although I enjoyed Kingsman, I didn't exactly enjoy that for the story, more the set pieces. And the set pieces of this show are awful. They have some moments that I feel should be so satisfying. Like, I try not to be too much for gore, but there are sort of moments of gore here where I feel if the animation style was not even better, different, I'd probably enjoy it a lot more. You know, if those moments where that whip that the butler had, if the blood splatter was more convincing and didn't feel like just an after effect put on whenever somebody... I mean, it's just a big blot of blood just appears whenever somebody gets hit. It's not, it doesn't even seem as though it's actually coming out of them. It's just superimposed in front of them. It's no, just no. There would have to be so much groundwork to be done for this to become an even passable show, and in 8 episodes, it's not going to get there.
So, where do you think it's going from this point?
Well, I know that Alucard is going to get into a boat. We know that there's a particular organisation that is after our protagonists.
Called Millennium.
Oh yeah, random Star Wars reference inserted into there.
Yep, that's Japan.
Do they like Star Wars over there?
They are as obsessed with Western culture, some of them anyway, as we are with Japanese culture.
Well, I do know that Twin Peaks has a really large following over there.
Yeah, The Simpsons has a large following over there, but it's not because of Homer or Bart, it's because of Lisa.
I can understand that.
Yeah.
I mean, Japanese culture very much values study and academic pursuits, so I mean, that Lisa fits that perfectly.
Yes.
But I'm trying to think of one positive thing besides the music's occasionally good, and I can't really think of anything. Well, is that bad?
Well, to be fair, you've only watched the first 2 episodes, so...
But there was no improvement in my mind between episode 1 and 2, perhaps besides the mere structure of episode 2 being slightly more agreeable in my eyes. I mean, what can I say? I generally prefer episodes that sort of take place over a single bit of time and depict like a battle or something like that. This was kind of that episode. Only kind of, though. This is an immensely disagreeable show. Those were 2 immensely disagreeable episodes, and I imagine the next 8 episodes will be incredibly disagreeable. But of course, I'm going to watch them.
Yeah.
Because I'm a man of my word.
Well, you've got to now for the podcast. Assuming this is ever released.
Assuming this is ever released. Because at the moment I'm reading your book, I'm looking for a job, I'm reading other books, I'm trying to get those Cinemaniac podcasts out.
You're not watching Avatar, you're not playing Life is Strange.
Oh, that's right, there are those 2 bloody things as well. Oh, how is it that I'm technically not even working and I still feel like I have a lot to do?
That's life.
It shouldn't. That was a disappointing movie.
Was it? I've never seen it.
You've seen Life.
Oh yeah, I haven't seen Matt's Life though, which I imagine is another movie.
I'm going to IMDb it.
Good.
I get back to my phone.
Anyway,
so I think
it's interesting being from my perspective because I've read the manga and seen
Seen the whole thing.
Seen the whole thing.
Incidentally, has the manga... Is it larger than the show? Does it go on?
No, the show actually ran out of material, so they had to stretch out what they had to fit 10-hour-long episodes. Because this guy just was so slow and sporadic with his...
Did he ever finish the story?
It's finished. It took him 10 years, though. It took him 10 years to release 100 chapters, which normally would take...
Had he not finished it when the show was released?
Ooh, that's a question. It was definitely... If it hadn't been completed, it was at the very end. Because the show had ended its publication long before the show ended.
Look, here's the interesting thing. Besides the manga that you gave me of the first Sherlock episode...
That's right, I forgot about that.
Which, by the way, what I found really unusual about that was the completely different way that the page was arranged.
Yes, that's because Japanese is read right to left.
Yeah, I know. So that was really odd for me to get used to. But besides that, although I still don't like the animation style, I will say this. I think that a manga probably is more consumable than an anime, because I can imagine...
It definitely is, because you don't have those long pauses that they put in to fill in budgetary concerns. So they don't stretch out conversations, they don't have those stupid shots where it's just eyes and people talking, and you can read it at any pace you want, so you can just fly through it and just bypass all of that.
And that's, I mean, the thing is that it very much feels like it's anime very much feels like a comic book sort of book to life, really. You know, it's with all the problems that would bring when you, because they haven't redone the animation, they've just tried, they've
copied it
and tried to fill in the spaces.
Yes, but it's not like Western animation where the budget is like spread out across the entire episode. Anime is very much focus the budget on the big action scenes and let all the quiet scenes just be almost non-moving.
Well, I mean, I don't really know how... That seems very much like a... If that's general policy, that's quite troubling, because if that happens, for instance, in English or American studio or something, that's considered terrible mismanagement. You know, to focus most of the budget on a particular area and completely neglecting the rest.
Well, it's not completely neglected, but the lion's share of the budget, because usually anime studios are underfunded. And they're doing these huge things. I mean, just get Saul started on Evangelion. But actually, don't do that. But
he is Evangelion.
Yeah, Evangelion.
Evangelion is to Saul what Breaking Bad is to me.
Yeah. And they ran out of money at the end. And a lot of the problem is it's not. Again, it's not like a Western animation studio where the entire season is completed, or, you know, pretty well completed before the airing starts. They're producing episodes right up until the air date. Like, some episodes are actually finished the day before the air date. So they have to consider the budgetary concerns.
In many ways, it reminds me a little bit of how South Park is made. They're very much on the fly when they conceive their seasons, which is why they're so up to date in terms of the issues they discuss. I think it's because they actually have a rather sophisticated system down of computer animation, and they can just sort of brush through the animation very quickly.
Yeah.
Well, you know, good for them. I suppose that's just a complete sort of different approach to it all, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, sure, if there's...
I mean, when it works, when you actually see the fruits of where that budget goes, it's very impressive.
Bloody well better be.
It's not been apparent in this. I'd say the later episodes have much better animation.
It's interesting because having watched the first season of Avatar, which, many people debate about whether or not it is an anime. I think general consensus is that it isn't as it isn't at the same time. I really quite like the animation of that.
Even though that is quite anime-esque.
Yes, but it just felt so much more... The movement was so much more fluent. Everything just kind of was more elegant, more smooth. With this, it's also jumpy and scratchy and just violent.
Yeah.
And not in terms of the content or the gore, in terms of just the actual design of it all. The movement. It's just all so rough.
Yeah, I honestly agree with a lot of the points that you're bringing up. But I think the difference between us is that I can see past all of the flaws and just not appreciate it, but just enjoy it for the dumb action bullshit that it is. And you get hung up on all the problems that it has. And it does have problems.
I think it all depends about how much you value the core sort of things it brings to the table. Like if, for instance, I can be very forgiving of... let's take A Cure for Wellness. I mean, I defend that film a lot, but I will grant that it's messy in terms of its screenwriting. But ultimately, there is a strong case of me very much liking the core ideas in it. The fact of somebody being isolated in a place surrounded by enemies, the whole sort of growing... the psychological tension, is this real, is this a dream, all that sort of thing. It's not a dream.
Nice troll, 10 out of 10.
So there's a genre appeal to me. I think what's happening is that there is a genre appeal to you to an extent about this.
Well, to be fair, this is one of the first anime I watched, so
There's also a nostalgia factor.
There's a nostalgia factor.
And
now that I'm actually... Yeah. I watched it a couple of years ago, and I'm watching it again now. These early episodes are not good. I will admit that.
I mean, because when I was younger, I used to love all the Bond films. Every single one I thought was a masterpiece. And of course, now that
even Never Say Never Again.
Actually, not Never Say Never Again. I didn't like that one even back then. But that's because of slightly more superficial reasons, like they don't have the gun barrel, the music isn't the same, and things like that. And those are just kind of like the icing on the cake now for the real reasons I hate that movie.
Yeah.
But of course now I see that a few of those Bond movies aren't really that good. Some of them are crap.
Yeah.
I still some of them are good, but some of them are definitely not.
Yeah.
Of course, most of them stay enjoyable in my mind, if not for the nostalgia factor. But nostalgia is a very strong force. It seems that there's a wonderful period in your life that if you see a particular movie, it just always keeps a level of fondness. There's always a fondness to it when you watch it.
Yeah.
All this. That's why I like watching films from the 90s so much, actually, because they remind me of that time. I saw Kindergarten Cop recently. I was thinking, oh, that takes me back. And Dante's Peak. Oh, good old nostalgia. But I'm becoming a nostalgia critic here.
Yep. This isn't nostalgia hell.
Nostalgia.
Get out. But anyway, I think that about covers it for the first two episodes. So
first two.
The general consensus is you fucking hate Hellsing.
Oh, so I was thinking first two of I was going to divide this into 2 episodes, and then no, I'm going to edit this down to 1.
No, edit it down to 1.
Have you got anything to say about it? I mean, you've seen it already. You know where it's going.
I feel like I should save my full thoughts on it for when we finish it, and then we can have a discussion about it.
As enlightening as this one.
Yes. But I guess we'll come back every few episodes to update on Samuel's real-time thoughts
on this absolute garbo show. Honestly, he's complaining about Game of Thrones being bad, and then we watch this, and I'm just like, you what? You complete hack.
You're the hack.
Anyway, so yes, I think we'll bring this particular episode to a close of how I learned to stop worrying and love the Animu.
Yep.
And that I've decided that will be the official name for the series.
Good.
Even though it has not happened yet. I'll tell you what, it's going to be like a promise of a title, so to speak.
Yeah.
It's not going to be the case of things...
So does that mean if you don't fulfill it, you'll have to give everyone their Patreon money back?
Yes, more or less. So, I mean, I'm trying to think of an equivalent work that does that, like gives the title of that sort of a promise of the end, so to speak. But there are some. I'm trying to think of one.
Yeah.
I was going to say Breaking Bad, but he does in the first episode, so... well, I'll tell you what. First thing I'll do when we start the next one is actually give you a work that actually does that, so I can justify this stupid title. And then, also, if that, I suppose we'll be doing it in 2 episodes, sort of clumps. We'll watch 2 episodes, then we talk about it, or 3, who knows.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll come back to this.
It's a bit of a problem because Hellsing is a bunch of hour-long episodes, whereas most anime is 20 minutes per episode. So when we start getting into more regular anime series, we'll probably watch it.
For this particular one, it's 2 clumps
we'll
of 2.
Watch 2 or 3 and then talk about it.
As long as we're not watching Steven Universe.
Tumblr's gonna fucking hate you so much for not liking Steven Universe.
Well, good. I've probably seen as a traitor now for not liking the final episode of Sherlock anyway.
Good.
I've disgraced Super Wholock.
No! Anyway, I think we're done here.
We're done here.
Alright, thank you for listening.
Toodaloo.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. Do you want to know how to become villain? Sing again. Da 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 da. Hey!